stopped and did some housework.
Oh,
Many people are experiencing that in many different ways. People that have reached out to me, and so there are leading. It's hard to drop names, all right? It's not fair. It's not fair for me to use somebody's name without getting their securing their permission first. But there are people that are pretty advanced in the field that say that you're living all your lives simultaneously is happening right now. Like that's your blink. Like you're alive on 1,000 different worlds at this very moment.
yeah.
So that is a leading theory in the I don't know the name of it, but like basically parallel lives. So that's very, very possible if that's the case. Also, there are people that, now I'm pretty sure I can use Penny Bradley's name.
Okay.
And her and other people have said that, they wake up in doing a job somewhere else. They go to sleep at night and wake up and go for long periods of time without feeling like they ever slept. They wake up and they're in another body doing a job, driving a tractor on Mars somewhere. And so I believe the reason for somebody like that, so the experience is different than what you're explaining. Your experience seems to be a little bit more specific to, your own purpose. But there are definitely probably people that have been used as master designs for clones. And when your subconscious gets lucid and gets to a certain level of brainwave activity, it has access to the outside of time space and can access those other bodies. And so wakes up like that and feels that. So while I was alive in the very beginning, it's funny, I still talk to people in a capacity for therapy. Put it that, you know what I mean? I'm not paying a therapist, but I talk to people and they, like, whatever. We just kind of sit and talk it out privately. And in the beginning, so there was a time when I was taken from the Earth and went straight to the moon and for the training before I went to Mars. There was a period of weeks there, and they were performing surgeries on me without anesthetic, without very much bedside manner at all. They would give me a surgery, set me in a room for a while, for a few hours, and give me another surgery. And at the end of the day, they would hose me down, and scrub me. I was an animal, and put me in a closet. And it was a 5x5 room with a blanket on the floor, and that's where I slept. They gave me food, was a paste, like a dog food. They gave me a dish of food, and that was my life for a matter of weeks. During that time, I frequently went to sleep in my life. So that was when I would have been just about 16 years old. And during that time, I would go to sleep on Earth and wake up in that cell. I think it's like a defense mechanism at that point. I think that it was a subconscious defense mechanism to where that person I was in the cell that was really being traumatized, feeling great trauma, was accessing my organic self in an attempt to balance it, to say, you know what I mean? Like, I do have a good life somewhere else. Some life isn't this bad, kind of, like a defense mechanism. So what you're going through is different. I mean, it pertains to your own, you have your own mission, your experience in that regard. But what I'm saying is the science behind it and the phenomenon happening to a lot of different people is very real. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure. Yes. And that after you live through your life, somebody else could start, just like it's a story, somebody else could be born in your life and live a completely different life as you. It's a choose your own adventure. And then you go into the next one, the timeline. We think of the timeline as something rigid, as history happened and that's it. But really, it's our timeline. It could somebody else, another class of people could come through this timeline and have completely different results. So, absolutely. Because what I want to say next, and I don't want to sound, I hope you don't see my grin as any kind of like disrespectful thing, because when you think about it like this, now I've had this conversation before too. A lot of people have asked me, like, like you said, like, I'm really concerned about the one girl you said, or somebody you guessed, Joyce, that was depressed and really didn't want to hear it, because a lot of my story, if you really listen to my account, I went through a lot of trauma and a lot of I suffered, man. You know, like it was hard labor, like a bare minimum. I was working hard labor as a slave. I didn't get compensated for what I did. But I've had people ask me, so, well, how could you do that? Why is there suffering allowed on that great level? How could you suffer that much? How could you agree to that, and why? And the same reason that, like you, like along the same lines that a woman in an advanced society, advanced species, might want to come down here and see what it's like to be a man.
Yeah.
Right. Because we live shorter lives.
Yes.
It's only 80 years. My answer to the suffering is like, look, it's only 80 years. What's that? I'm an eternal being. So what's 80 years of suffering for a lot of growth? It's a faster growth. When you go and take a bumpier ride, a more advanced skill setting, it's a faster growth. You know what I mean? Like I learned lessons faster by suffering, you know, and that's how we learn. If everything went peachy for everybody, you would learn very little. Nobody would go to school. You wouldn't have to go to college and learn anything if your whole life was taken care of. It's not until you suffer that you take the effort of learning. Incarnation, it's only a short time. It's not 1,000 years. It's not 1,500 years of life where you're stuck. When you access the higher consciousness beings, I say it like this. You know, a dog has a dozen words. They speak a dozen words. Birds have 100 words. Humans have 200,000 words, 250,000 words. There are beings, the more advanced beings, have 1,000,000 words. They have words for everything, you know, like they have 1,000,000 words because they have that kind of a consciousness. So when you're in a species, you know, and we are going to live that, you're going to get to there, you know, the sure way that you've lived in lower, in order to get to be a human, you've lived the lower lives as well. Like I'm reading it out of a book and I'm not. This is just my opinion. So I spoke English. A lot of people spoke English. There were a lot of people from Europe there, but we had implants, and there were areas that you could go where you could understand everybody.
Yeah.
So there were implants, and what it was a local tech. So I always tell people like this, you know, in the interviews, is that the when I was in mission briefings, they were speaking German there, and they could flick a switch. They had like pads, and they could hit a switch in there and turn on my implant, and I could understand them. They turned it on and off. When they wanted to speak without me knowing it, they turned it off, and it was German. I couldn't understand them. And they would always get upset when they would talk to me for a while and go, oh, we forgot to turn it on, and have to repeat themselves. And they always got mad about that. Also, it automatically worked in the elevators, and it automatically worked at the exit, at the door of the ship. So if somebody was outside the door and they spoke a different language, before you let them in, you had the translator tech on. So whenever there was a guy that worked in cargo that was Italian, and he only spoke Italian, and all day long he would come by and, you know, he would say rude stuff to us, and we would talk rude back to him. Or whenever there was something, we would wait for him and catch him at the exit and ask him what he was talking about, because we had that one area that we could understand him. Colony, which were descended from Germans that left Germany. They considered themselves a faction of Germany, and they were descended from people that were around Germany in like Denmark. I don't know the culture, the significance of that, but they were big on like the 1600s. But that is exactly how they did business. That is exactly how they did it. You can either do it or we'll kill you. You know, you could do this over there, or we'll put you out the airlock, we'll shoot you. There was always a method of death that they had handy, but that was exactly how they did business. It sounds eerily like, you know, what I went through, like the same kind of group that I belonged to during that time. That is exactly the mentality they had. They were basically completely a military organ. They were organized like the military. There was no government, there was no election or anything like that. So, but yeah, that is absolutely typical of what they would have done. Okay. So I will say this, that I've talked to other people that had recall about as good as me. So everybody that I've spoke to that has memories of being, some people it's very vague and they don't remember much, very, very little memory. Some people have a lot of memories, and I've met people have contacted me that had all their memories back, or most of them, like I do, but they don't want to speak about it publicly. I've heard that it's very common for people to be in a program where you have a prestigious job, a career, and you're going along in a program, and they do like an exchange where you go to another program and they get very badly abused. And you know what I'm saying? Like somebody that would be an ambassador for on a military level that would do jobs like that, get traded for a period of 6 months to another program and then be enslaved and be abused and sexually abused and have a lot of bad things happen because the programs basically treat people like equipment, and they treat their equipment differently. So that was common. That is something that's very possible. So when you're you because it sounds to me like you have memories of an experience that was, I don't want to say pleasant, but certainly humane. And then you also have memories of an experience that would be inhumane, that would be, you know, like a different program. And that was common up there. I've heard that from a lot of people and a lot of whistleblowers that have come forward. That's something they don't want to talk. I've asked them off the record, and I didn't get a no, but I got a I'm not going to talk about it, you know, because a lot of people don't want to admit that they went through being treated the way that I was, a lot of ways that I publicly admitted.
Okay.
So I sounds like there's a lot, it sounds like there's enough there for you to research further to do it. So I really want to have a website together for people to come. My idea is that I want to have a chat room where people can speak anonymously. So, you know what I mean? Because it's a whole lot easier to talk about, you know, people want to come in with their name and say that, you know, I was a general and I commanded an army and I had my own ship and I was in charge of everything. But people that don't want to go and say, you know, I was enslaved and then they beat me and tortured me, you know, people don't want to talk about stuff like that. So I want to put an area where people can anonymously do it, because talking to other people is really the best way to remember more and the best therapy to get over it. Because, I mean, you know, without trying to diagnose you more, I don't want to say, but it's very common for people with memory like you and tendencies or hangups in your own life. You know what I mean? Like like side effects from it. Personality. I did. I still do. I still do. I've worked through a lot of it, but it's a very, you know, that's normal for that to happen. So.
Right. Okay.
There have always been. We did missions all over the place, um, all through the '90s and the late '90s. We went to Earth quite often, a couple times a week. We came to Earth, so there are, you know, I think a lot of people, myself included, feel that if there was a ship anywhere in the world, that it would be seen by the authorities, the military, or like an observatory or something. But that's really not the case. By and large, most of the world is not observed. And a lot of the ships, the craft, I have very active. They have active stealth and stealth designs and ways around it. So there's actually quite a bit of extraterrestrial traffic on the Earth that we just never see. There's a lot of activity out in the oceans, and even in remote islands, parts of the United States have a lot of activity. You know what I mean? People don't see objects that are going 50,000 miles an hour. So maybe if you are, maybe you're referring to people that say that like there's a Galactic Federation ship parked. So I don't know. You know, like none of my information is really. You know, I'm the same as everybody else as far as getting current information. You know, what happened to me was a long time ago, and so I don't know. I can't confirm or deny it. You know, it seems to me it makes sense. I mean, it's a no-brainer when you look at what the world is going through right now, the state of the planet, which is we're in a historic time. You know, it's a no-brainer that there's going to be quite a bit of hardware in the area. You said that does that, you saw something that we weren't supposed to see. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, you know, Australia and New Zealand and their proximity to Antarctica, I think have access to a lot of program traffic down there. South America, definitely. But it seems to me that from the people that I've contacted in Australia, people that I've talked to one-on-one, that there are completely different programs accessing them. I've always categorized people that talk to me about in their programs into three categories. I said this before, that there are human space programs, secret space programs that are ran by humans. Germans, United States, the United Nations, China, Japan has one. Those are human programs. Then there's a Draco program, basically the reptiles, the Orion group, and they're a pretty big group, and they all have a lot of trauma. And usually, people that are interacted with them usually get treated badly, and have some trauma. So, and that's a group. And then the third category is everybody else. And I found that the New Zealand and Australia, the people that are contact, are more likely to have everybody else. So somebody passing by would go there and, rather than take somebody that belongs to the Draco group in the United States, they can go down to the southern hemisphere and take from and contact and commit abductions and experiments on people down there without crossing a boundary. I think the world is sliced up into territories for them.
Mm. Cool.
There were rumors about it, the black goo, when I was on the ship, and they always talked about trying to weaponize it, but it was something that they couldn't do, that it was even dangerous for them, that it was an AI, and that they wanted to weaponize it. They wanted to be able to control it and use it, but they couldn't. And and there were places in the world that were off limits, and places in space that were off limits for that reason. But I did hear conversations about it, about the black goo that was, I believe, in places in Antarctica that were off limits.
Okay.
Yeah, Tony, I'd love to know more about what you think is going to happen. So you're talking about disclosure and the whole COVID thing. What's your take on the whole COVID thing? And
Like I said, my take on COVID is, when you look at it, if you just take a step back and look at it, before the crisis, me personally, for the last 15 years, I caught a cold every year. Every single year I've caught cold, and I think I've been sick more than not, usually with some sort of viral infection, and I think the world was just full of viruses that have been transmitted. And now that, because of the COVID virus, we've also killed off many of the other viruses as well. We've literally sterilized a lot of the world just by not being in contact with each other. I mean, really, just in the last 3 or 4 months, or however long it's been going on, we've really greatly, by and large, sterilized the planet. And I think that's a precursor to all the ETs visiting. I mean, who would want to visit a planet that it was thick with viruses? Would you go down to help people, knowing that they were sick with viruses, that you were going to get sick, that could possibly kill you? So I think that was step one to a disclosure event, to having visitors, over, to having company over. My feeling is that, and again, this is a theory, but my feeling is that disclosure is going to revolve around the next moon mission, manned moon mission. I think that they're going to make an excuse to say, because people are going to go, why didn't you contact us all along? I think they're going to want to give it a sanitized, watered down version of disclosure. And I think that they're going to go to the moon in 2024, which is also when the next president will be out of office. If Trump gets reelected, he would no longer be eligible for reelection in 2024, so he must leave office. And so if they disclosed at that time, he could have complete deniability about, I don't know what happened. Wow. And the incoming president could also have deniability and say, well, look at that. Wow, we have aliens. I didn't know. And they could go from there. I think it's a safer political play for them. I think that they're going to go to the moon. They're going to find an artifact on the moon. And then at that point, we'll be contacted by ETs, probably a Nordic race. And they'll be able to say, look, now that you found us, we had a treaty to leave you alone until you discovered us. But now that you discovered us on national TV and on the internet, we can come down and communicate. Boom, there's aliens, and look at all this world, look at all the life up here. And then that'll kickstart it. And then slowly, the same way that nobody cares about disclosure now, as years develop, nobody's going to care about the fact that these programs have gone on for the last 100 years, because people are going to have so much to do with the current disclosure at the time in the future. That's my guess of how they would do it. That's just a hunch. And I think that that's what they tried to do with the moonshot back in the in the 70s and early 70s, and it just got the plan got killed by international powers that be. So I think that they're going to take a better run at it now. Also, we're seeing technologies that are coming out of the space program. Yeah, all eyes on Tesla, SpaceX, Hyperloop. His batteries are basically, that's how everything on the Ceres colony, behind everything was battery powered. There were no gasoline, anything. And the Hyperloop was a train system that was there. A vacuum train system was what they were using. And he's going into space and wants to go to Mars. So I think that that's a form of disclosure in its own, and they're going to make it look like it's ours. But really, the programs have had this stuff all along. So I think we're going to get a disclosure, but I think it's going to be more on like a 4 or 5 year timeline.
So it sounds quite gentle compared to what Randy is talking about, possibly insectoids having a fake alien invasion. Your version sounds gentle.
What? I'm sure that you got to understand that you can bet your life that there are very, very, very smart people sitting in a room right now figuring out ways to do it, that have access to the information on both sides. They have access to all the population control mechanisms, and they're figuring out the best way to do it. And I'll bet there are trial groups. I bet somewhere in the world right now they're doing fake invasions. They're doing disclosure on a trial basis. And remember, they can delete people's memories. So they can go into an entire town and disclose and see what happens, see what the reaction is, and then delete their memory. So I wouldn't doubt that that's going on somewhere in the world, maybe a third world country or somewhere. People don't have phones. But they are definitely working the problem. We are going to get a disclosure. The alternative, the thing on Ceres colony was that the Germans always felt that they were just going to kill us off and put us back into the Stone Ages, and that the cycle would repeat, that they would use the Earth as for labor and for resources. And then when people got to the point which we are now, where they could discover it on their own without the government, that they would just kill everybody off back into the Stone Ages, and then you'd get a few more 1,000 years of development. And it seems to be that entire plan is not viable at the point. Like, they're not willing to kill us off. Otherwise, we would have had a war by now. A big shooting war, I think, would have broke out by now. So I don't think that that's going to be allowed by probably the Intergalactic Federation came down and said, no, you're not going to do that. Not that kind of killing. Because you got to think, when you kill a lot of people off, 1 billion people, that those souls become a problem for somewhere else all at once.
Yes. And what about 5G, vaccinations? What are your thoughts on that?
I personally hate vaccinating. I don't like needles. I remember when I was young and got vaccinated, I lost something very, like I had intuition. I had a very happy feeling about the way the world was, and I got vaccinated and it went away and it never came back. And so vaccines, I believe, you got to think the original Germans learned about space flight from channeling ETs through a psychic channeling. And then now we have the fluoride in our water, and then the vaccination. It seems like that kills that ability right out of the gate. So they shut the door behind them by vaccinating everybody. There are very few. And frankly, I think there's a lot more psychic people down under than there is in America. I think we are kind of more heavily dosed. There's not a lot of intuitive people in America. There really isn't, compared to what I've seen in Australia and elsewhere. So I think vaccinations are an active program to suppress intuitive ability. I think that the 5G was I want to hope and pray and think that it's not as bad for your health as what they say. 5G was for sure the best spying program that ever was put out by a country for another country. China was going to have complete access to every politician's phone and every citizen's phone. They were going to know where we spent our money, where we traveled, how far we drove, what we did, every conversation. They had cameras. 5G was owned by the Chinese government, and they would have had access to all the data. I think that during the COVID crisis, there was wording in the stimulus program and the stimulus money spent that changed kicked Huawei out. I'll say that right. The Chinese company out, and now there is a United States owned 5G network getting installed. So I think that that was also kind of in there. I think it was a spying program, and I think that the early on when they said that when they were doing the disinfo about how unhealthy it was to limit people from purchasing it, to slow it down in the first place. Just, you know what I mean, to kind of as a stopgap against the Chinese. So I think that it was a uh, covert op. Idea of what kind of profession you had. Okay, so to answer your question, 5 is not too early. It depends. Some people are groomed genetically from birth. Like literally the moment you were in the womb, they started manipulating you for the program. So a lot of the US programs are from birth. And so that you could have went at 5. I found that in my dealings that 12 years old for females and 17 years old, 16 and 17 years old for males is a common age to be taken. I was taken at 10. I was a little early. A lot of the other boys in the program were older than me. You know, I was a younger kid for where I was in the program. But I think girls, it's pretty common right around 12 years old. So that would put you to 20 to 32 years old and then back. So, but 5, you know, they'd be 15 and then 25. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It seems to me, though, if you were taken the younger you were taken, the more you would be groomed for a specific career. One career, two, you know, 1 or 2 careers, and that's it, because you would have been genetically manipulated to be optimal at that career. So if you're taken later around 12, even 16 years old, that you would be someone that would be aptitude tested and then taught a career, if that makes sense. Times in your life that you remember the things that you remembered, when you remembered them, and then just any kind of events in your childhood. I would be willing to bet that the original abduction would be a memory in there somewhere. So if you could think back to any kind of personality change or any kind of problems you had as a kid, something changed. I would start there vaguely and start the count there, and it would be in 20-year increments. Caucasian people have the ability to go twice. So say 10 years old till they were 30, then go back, then live till you're 30 and go 31 to 51 and then go back. So I did not have the genetics for that. I think it's common among Caucasian people, and other races can do it as well. Other human races can do it, but it's common among Caucasians to do it two back-to-back 20s. But they're in 20-year increments. So,
Yeah.
and then, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility that there are more than one way to achieve this, that there is more than one form of technology that lets you do the same thing. What you've got to do, I mean, you know, right now you take a picture on a piece of glass and smash it on the floor, and you have fragments of the picture laying there in broken pieces. And that's kind of what it sounds like you and Stephanie actually have. You know, it sounds like that's what you guys are looking at. You're looking at individual memories, the bigger pieces. You know, it's a picture that's on a piece of glass and it breaks. The bigger pieces are the ones that you can remember right now. You pick up that piece and you see a picture of a ship and a man, or a ship and you know what I'm saying? The little tiny fragmented pieces you can't make anything out of until you can put it all together somehow. You're just assembling a puzzle. So over time, if you maintain your timeline and keep, like I said, to try to remember and then wait, and then you'll get a little bit more. If you can get those pieces, I mean, you're gonna be working. I'm still working at it. I've been at it for almost 5 years. 5 years now, going on 5 years. Wow, that was fast. I'm still working at it, and I'm still getting new stuff. I'm still remembering. You're going to be doing this realistically for the rest of your life. If you know you're in a program and you don't have all your memories given to you, you know, if you were voluntarily blank slated or blank slated against your will, you're going to be working on this for the rest of your life. Let's, you know, call it what it is. You have to be very patient. Everybody wants that. People think that I'm going to utter some magic phrase and they're going to get all their memories back. And I really, I get it a lot. Like, help me remember. And I go, wait a minute. First, let's make a timeline. What do you remember the most? And then they get frustrated. I never hear from them again because they want an instant gratification. And it's a process, and it's going to take years. You know, I was fortunate in the beginning, but it's a process. As time comes, the question you just asked me, is it a my lab? Is it this? It's gonna answer itself as you put more together. So there are some free meditations. There's the Monroe Institute, some binaural meditations you can do before bed. I would recommend that. There are 2 free ones. The Gateway Experience on YouTube, I would recommend that. I would turn down all the electrical equipment that you can in your house, except for what you're listening to, because EM equipment interferes with any kind of channeling session. So whenever they did remote viewing, the CIA in Inyakern, they turned off all the electrical equipment for hundreds of yards around. They wanted an EMP blackout, and we had suppression. We had silver-lined blankets and EM shielding. I would work on that. I would try a Monroe Institute meditation and work on do that before you bed. It's like binaural stuff, and ask yourself just set your sights low at first. Just another, you know what I'm saying? Like take one memory. You're standing on a ship. That's it. What did I do next? Set your sight low, build on it, because once you get, memories tend to, once you get a solid next one, it'll open the door. More memories will come. When you remember one thing, 10 more things will come. So that's how and then you just want to build on it slowly. But I would try those meditations. They've worked for me in the past. And then I can't stress it enough. Take time off. Take 2 or 3 days and forget about it. Don't, because it's a muscle. When you're trying to remember something, your mind is a muscle. And so you'll work that and search for those memories and let that muscle rest, and it'll get stronger. And then, that's just how it works. This is the experience. Went to the Orion Nebula, the trapezium. We went there, but generally speaking, any star that you can see from Earth, the 3,000 stars that you can see from Earth, are basically all the same people. Put it this way, I've explained it like this in other interviews. Like, we were looking for products, we were looking for technology to buy for cheap. So, I'm in America, and if I want to go and buy a product, a widget in America, it's going to be expensive. But I can go to other countries, third world countries, places in Africa, Thailand. I can get things that are cheaper because the trade rate is different. All of the places we went were farther out than what you can see from Earth. So we didn't spend much time at any stars within range of Earth. We may have heard about it, but basically those are all settled by they're all at the same level of technology. Sirius would be like Earth, so we didn't go there. Me personally, no. To answer your question, no. Logistical thing, and I think that there are genetic experiments that have come to fruition. I think they've been cutting people off into genetic areas for the whole time, for the entire time that we've been on the Earth. And so they have your genetics labeled, and different countries have different medical systems that allow access to your genetics. So that's a kind of a big deal to make sure, portal technology works based on genetics. Some people can portal more often than others and farther than others. So they keep track of the genetics, and I think that that's how it's cut up, or why it's cut up. Did anything happen in your life in the months to come, and a month or two after that? Did anything happen? Did you meet your wife or get a new job or anything like that? Right. So you got a complete change, like a download. Again, it sounds like a visiting program. A triangle ship with the 3 lights is typically, a human ship. The The technology with the hands, a lot of times they can put an implant in you and change behavior. There are implants that a favorite spot of the implant is your left nostril up in there. They'll put an implant in your nasal cavity, and then they can suggest they can beam suggestion, voice of God technology, but basically like a subconscious suggestion into you and change behavior. They can a lot of the genetics are work that way. They breed people. That's why I asked. That's and a side effect of that is the hands, the energy coming out of the hand. Like you feel like your hands are got static electricity coming out of them. You feel like your energy from your hands. So that's when they're interacting with you. So because it's hard to get the words out because this is something I don't speak about publicly. It's kind of scary. But basically, your subconscious is kind of logged on to their system, is what that is. So, that being said, do you remember them asking you permission for anything, or do you remember any kind of words or contact? Do you have anybody in your daily life that you talk to about this? Okay, so right. So I'm speculating. All I can give you is my opinion at this point. It sounds like a visiting program, like my third category of everybody else, not a Draco program, and may or may not be a human-based program. It sounds like a visiting program.
Okay.
It sounds like you have probably some implants in you, and you are being guided to do some sort of carry out a mission. Whether or not you remember a permission-based interaction or however they plugged you into their system is one thing. But what I would do is if you have a group of people that you want them to, you want us, okay, I tell everybody else, make your timeline and write down your timeline. In your case, I would say have somebody else make a timeline of you, somebody else to observe your behavior. I'm not saying that you're crazy or that they're going to use you to do something, you know what I mean, Manchurian candidate, but keep an eye on that because your whole life changed immediately right after this event, which means they're steering you to do something. So you need somebody else. You need a second party at least to keep, to be close to you and to note and let you know, like, hey man, this isn't like you. You're changing all of a sudden, just in case they do. There's another event and you change again. Does that make sense? Um, so yeah, it sounds like you've definitely been either unlocked or programmed. I don't want to speculate. I don't want to put some kind of negative spin on it. It depends on.
Yeah.
My point is this: like looking as an outsider at how they work, how those programs work when they do people. Some of them are. I've heard of people that made an even trade. That girls made an even trade and traded some of their eggs, and in return got like their teeth fixed, and then they put them back. Like a program came down here, some ET race said, "Look, we need some of your eggs. We're going to grow some clones and whatever, and we'll do that." Your case, I mean, it sounds like it's like life changing. You know what I'm saying? Like you're on a high level of, you're in a high caliber change, and then like you said with the energy work, so it's paving the way for something. Like I said, we are the disclosure generation. We are we're alive right now. We're going to see disclosure. God forbid, God willing that nothing bad happens to any of us here in the next 10 years, but we're going to see it. And so it makes sense that programs are going to come down here and kind of pave the way. I'm sure that your story is going to have more to come in the future, but I would keep an eye on you. And like I said, just have your friends kind of keep a journal of things you do, and when they happen, because there'll be a curve of progression or a curve of decline. Who knows? You want to keep track of that. So to be fair to you, um, about the energy work. The reason that's the reason why I'm saying it's a visiting program, is because it seems like you're doing something to kind of benefit people that you come in contact with. Look, so what you mentioned earlier about the energy work and how to heal people. There's a CIA document on color breathing, it's called. And what they found was that the CIA put it states of mind into, they categorize states of mind, states of consciousness into focuses. So right now, hopefully everybody here is wide awake and you're in focus 1. So you're in the very first focus. As you go to sleep, you get drowsy, you're in focus 2. Focus 3 is the pre-sleep, and then focus 4 and 5, you're into more of a deep sleep, and then focus 10, I believe, is REM sleep. So you were in a coma, you were like in focus 15 or 18. And when you're in focus 10 to 12, you have access to outside of time space. So in that state of mind, you can see the future, the past, your past lives. You can communicate with everybody's subconscious on the world. And this is something that they found. And you can do the color breathing. They found ways to heal people. They found ways to hurt people in that state, in a focus 12 state. You might look into that. There's some CIA documents about it that are unclassified, that are free, public knowledge. You might look into some of that if that helps you. It sounds like you are somebody that would benefit from reading the Stalking the Wild Pendulum book, Isaac Benthov's, which explains the physics of kind of the things that you feel, what you're going through, the physics of consciousness. It doesn't hurt to learn the rules. I would say to do that, but like the color breathing. And there was one other thing I was going to mention, but I forget.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Brent, I'd be interested to see how you are in a year from now.
Thank you.
So yeah, we've probably got about 5 minutes left. Are there any lasting messages, final messages you want to give to us?
I have a question for, I have a question for you guys. I have a question for everybody.
Yes.
Where, like, you guys have been watching my interviews and my things, like, where do you think I should go next? Like, what kind of things should I elaborate on out of all my testimony? What do you think I should elaborate on and kind of work on?
Well, I think for me is to help people wake up and to be able to retrieve their memories and to deal with the trauma. And I think freedom is something that a lot of people are really wanting after so many unethical programs that we've been subjected to. Yes, I think guidance on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So many people come forward to, saying that they, like yourself, that say that they have a lot of things that they remember along that are parallels.
Yep.
I'm writing this down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I kind of just meander through it. I don't have a grand scheme here. It's not a career, and or even a calling. It's just one step has led to the next step is how I've been doing it all. So that's why I'm asking. It's good to hear. Thank you. Every bit of support is important. What I'm hoping to happen is inside the book. It's going to go the full spectrum. I'm really trying to write the spectrum of the book. So basically, I want to cover the things that happened to me as far as abuse, where that went, and then all the way to the spiritual stuff and beyond. Like I'm gonna include it all in the book. So because some people I can get in a conversation with them and right out of the gate it gets very advanced. you know, spiritually or how, whatever you know what I'm saying? Like when you advanced, you know, like they completely understand all about incarnation, law of one, just the way the universe actually works. And most people don't. Most people are scratching the surface of it, and you have to judge kind of where you're at in the conversation. You know, like I've had people that sat down with me and just blew my mind. You know what I mean? Right out of the gate. I went, whoa! So that escalated quick. And so I kind of, you know, it's my hope that in the book I can gradually step it up through the chapters and explain kind of how I arrived to my own opinions. You know, to do that because, you know, I'm not super advanced. You know what I mean? I just remember. That's the thing. That's the only thing that separates me from anybody else that's had some kind of contact or anything. And you're talking about many thousands, probably millions of people. The only difference between me and them is that I remember it.
All right.
Yeah. Apparently there's a history there. I in the early years after I came public, I was in a few Facebook groups, and one of them had like 50 people that all said that they had memories of being taken and going on a 20 and back. And I had read something about you know, the blood types, the common blood types into the programs for the technology, and I thought, So, and I said posted in the group, I said, so I read this, I put the link for the article, and I said, look, I'm Rh negative, I'm O negative. That's my blood type. I said, is anybody else in here like that? And literally, you know, and O is a very rare, not very rare, but it's a pretty rare blood type. You know, I forget the percentage, but more than half of the people in the group were O negative, and even more, and another 5% probably were O positive. And these were all, you know what I'm saying? Like it was very, very out of balance. There was way more O people in that group that had that as a common denominator than should have, you know. So it was something. So it's real. So what I'm saying is that phenomenon is real. People that are taken have a lot of common denominators. They usually have some form of childhood abuse, O negative, you know, or O positive blood type, or an Rh negative. I think that categorizes you and makes you available to certain forms of technology, either be it with the cloning or with the portal tech, or who knows? I don't know for sure, but there are definitely separate blood types have separate gifts that they can exploit with technology.
All right, well, we're coming to the end of our event with Tony. Thank you so much again for coming on. I think it's been really appreciated by everyone, and we've gotten a lot out of it. I think, yeah, it's really, really helpful, helping us all put the pieces together for ourselves, and I think we're all in it together. And yeah, so thank you so much, Tony, and maybe we'll get you out to Australia again.
I'm hoping to come next year. Actually, I'm hoping that I'll be back
Really?
in some maybe in April of next year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I would love to meet. It's been wonderful to meet all you people. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it there. It's great to meet people. I learn as much as I learn way more than I talk whenever I go to a conference, for sure.
Right. Great. Well, we'll look forward to yeah, you coming out if you do in April.
So there's talks of it. It was going to happen last year, but we had the COVID thing happened all at once. It was, you know,
Yes.
we'll see. The world's changing. Who knows?
Yes, that's right. All right. Thank you, Tony.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Tony.
See you. Bye.
All right. Take care. I'll
Bye.
Bye.
hear from you all soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.